Okay, so this critique looks at some excerpts from a video commentary, basically celebrating CNN fact-checking Candace Owens on the Charlie Kirk situation, specifically about those text messages, right? The timestamps and all that?
Yeah, exactly. And, a big part of it seems to be the satisfaction in watching someone struggle to back up their claims publicly. So let's dig into how we can maybe strengthen that commentary, make it even more persuasive.
Right, that's a good frame. But, listening to it, I immediately wondered about the language. I mean, calling her a dingbat, psychopath, a massive joke. Does that intensity actually help the argument, or does it maybe risk putting some listeners off, people who were there for the fact? That's a fair point. The material does lay out the factual case pretty well, misreading the indictment, the lack of evidence provided. But the tone, it does feel more like celebrating a win than, say, a cool-headed analysis.
Exactly. And that's the first big thing. The heavy use of ad hominem attacks and that really charged language. It sort of detracts from the speaker's credibility, as a reliable voice on what's true. If you're trying to show someone else is illogical or dishonest, you kind of need your own approach to be, clearly better, more objective.
Okay, so what's the core weakness there, underneath the name-calling?
Okay, but couldn't you argue that for this kind of online commentary, you need that punchiness, that aggression, to keep people watching? Like, if you strip all that away, does it just become dry? Right. Making the evidence the star, not the commentator's reaction to it. Okay, so how do you do that? How do you make that shift without losing all the energy? You center the criticism on the specific weakness that the CNN interviewer actually highlighted. So for instance, instead of just calling her a lunatic over and over, you zero in on the failure to give any proof that the feds concocted the texts, especially when she claimed she had these very strong sources everywhere.
Let's maybe workshop that a bit.
Okay, so instead of saying, this dingbat is acting like a child, which, is just dismissive, you'd pivot to analyzing the mistake itself.
Precisely. You replace that phrase. Use something focused, like the key logical flaw here is the misrepresentation of the indictment. She insisted they were Discord messages, but the indictment explicitly says text messages. That fundamental misreading, that's the core failure. And honestly, that's much more damaging than any insult. You let the facts, the weight of that error, deliver the punch. Focusing on how and why the argument failed gives your own analysis much more authority.
Yeah, that makes sense. It shifts it from just judging the person to assessing their professional competence, increasing your own credibility.
Absolutely. And that kind of professionalism, that sets a much stronger foundation for everything else in the piece.
Okay, building on that idea of foundation, let's talk structure and flow. The notes mention the commentary keeps bringing up the irony of CNN being the one to expose these claims, given, the history there. And that's a good hook, right? That unexpected source, it has potential.
Oh, the irony is definitely potent. I agree. It's a great observation. But, and this is the structural issue, it gets repeated a lot.
Redundancy?
Yeah. The repetition of that specific point, the CNN irony, it starts to feel a bit heavy-handed after a while. It actually slows things down and dilutes the main focus.
I noticed that too. It's introduced right at the start. The irony is rich. Okay, great setup. But then we get variations later. I'll say it again for dramatic effect. Of all the media companies, the irony once again. It feels like the commentary keeps hitting pause and rewinding back to that initial setup point.
And that's the weakness. That constant circling back stops the analysis from moving forward. It prevents a deeper dive into Owens' other claims, maybe about financial reports or the nature of her sources, because time is spent just re-highlighting the CNN angle. The speaker seems so thrilled by that irony. They keep bringing it up, but it ends up eating valuable time.
Yeah, I've seen that happen before. You get excited about a clever angle and you hit it so hard you kind of smother the main argument. So the suggestion is streamline it structurally?
Exactly. Treat the irony as a single, powerful setup. State it clearly and concisely right near the beginning. And then?
Pivot immediately to the substance. The actual interview, the claims, the evidence or lack thereof. The key is to cut out all those later repetitions. It sharpens the flow, makes it feel much tighter, and frees up time for more, actual analysis of the core issue. Okay, but how do you make sure that one mention lands effectively so it sticks without needing the repeat?
You frame it well the first time, Stay few irony, CNN as the unlikely fact-checker here, maybe briefly contrast it with common criticisms of the network just to sharpen the point, and then boom, straight into analyzing her defense strategy. The timestamps, the text message claim. Use that irony to launch the discussion, not constantly anchor it.
Okay, and what specific phrases could go?
Well, things like, I'll say it again, for dramatic effect, the irony is rich, isn't it? That one's definitely filler. And also, I never thought I'd be praising CNN, but I mean, it did take CNN to prove it's conversational, yeah, but it's a speed bump. Cutting those tightens the whole narrative. It gets the listener to the core analysis, the real meat, much faster. Keeps the momentum going. The audience is already interested. You don't need to keep reselling them on the initial premise.
That makes a lot of sense. That structural tweak could really improve the pacing. Okay, so we've talked tone, we've talked structure. Let's look at the end, the conclusion. How do we elevate the payoff?
Right, because the heart of this whole piece is really a strong critique of, let's say, poor standards of evidence in public arguments. But is there a risk that by focusing just on the commentator's satisfaction, the humiliation aspect, it misses a chance to talk about the bigger picture? The broader lesson here?
I think there is. The current ending feels very much like a personal win. Like, I enjoyed watching it, but it kind of stops there. It doesn't quite connect the dots for the audience in a lasting way.
Exactly. So the weakness is that it concludes with this sense of sort of personal triumph and dismissal. The speaker literally says, that's enough for me, instead of synthesizing the key factual weaknesses. Missing timestamps, misread messages, poor sourcing, and turning them into a valuable takeaway. Something high level for the audience about, I don't know, media literacy or political arguments today.
Yeah, it's like a really effective gotcha moment that just fades out, doesn't crystallize into a lasting insight. So how do we fix that? How do we turn that momentary win into something more significant?
The suggestion is to use those specific factual failures, the concrete examples from the interview, as a launch pad. Use them to offer a strategic observation, maybe a lesson learned for people consuming information online. That shift elevates the critique from being just about one person's mistake to being a piece of commentary with broader relevance.
Okay, so instead of ending with, she got owned, wasn't that great? You pivot to something like, okay, so what does this whole episode teach us, the audience, about evaluating claims going forward?
Precisely that. You make those factual errors the foundation of a strategic takeaway. For example, connect the specific point, hey, timestamps on messages actually matter a lot. Connect that to a bigger lesson, a lesson about the baseline standards for digital evidence in serious political debates now. Frame it as a practical reminder. This is the minimum bar for credibility today.
That feels much more valuable to the listener. It changes the experience from just watching commentary to actually getting equipped with, like, critical thinking tools.
So you're using that internal conflict not just for gossip value, but as a teaching moment, showing the real consequences when sourcing and evidence standards slip. That weaves that final detail back into the main theme really nicely. Shows the real-world cost.
Exactly. It creates a conclusion that resonates, that has meaning long after this specific news cycle fades. It's really the difference between, just another reaction video and a piece of truly authoritative analysis. Okay, let's quickly recap the actionable suggestions then. First, dial back the really aggressive, hyperbolic language. Let the facts, the actual evidence of the missteps, do the heavy lifting. That'll boost your own credibility.
Second, streamline the structure, cut out the repeated mentions of the CNN irony, state it once, make it count, then keep the focus tight on the evidence and the analysis, sharpens the flow.
Right. And finally, elevate the conclusion. Move beyond just personal satisfaction. Use those specific factual problems, the timestamps, the message types, as a case study. Deliver a bigger, more lasting takeaway for your audience about media accountability or the standards of evidence we should expect.
Yeah, those three changes together, I think, would really transform the commentary. Make it less about the momentary burn and more about providing lasting insight.
Excellent. We definitely look forward to seeing how you incorporate these ideas. Please send the next draft back whenever you're ready.